Hey, this is United in Green. This is season two, episode seven. We're at seven. Um, I know that it's been over a week since our last match, the US Open Cup match versus the Carolina Core Foxes. Um, and we didn't come out the way we wanted to on that, but that's okay. We'll get into that in a little bit here. Until then, we're gonna welcome our guy Tyson, the returning champion. How you doing, Tyson?
I am doing good. We had a nice, beautiful day for the eclipse up here in northern Vermont. Got to go and uh, enjoy the totality from work at the hospital. So that was a really cool experience. I'm not going to lie, but it's definitely not an experience that I would shell out hundreds of dollars for in terms of accommodations and then spend 11 hours stuck on the interstate trying to get back to, you know, New Hampshire, Connecticut, or Massachusetts. I'll tell you that.
Dude, it was completely wild to see the amount of people that were like out and about. My son had to go to, and got out of work early. We didn't have really anything going on at the hospital, so I drove home, and of course, getting on the bus and everything, like I'm looking at Facebook pages and stuff and talking to people like, oh yeah, the interstate's completely backed up. And the bus driver's like, oh yeah, all the parking rides are full. You can't even get through. So good luck getting home at any point. And of course, I get on the road and it's like the zombie apocalypse. There's nobody on the road. No one going to I-9 89 North. It's because they were already in their spot ready to go. So I get home, we watched it with the family. It was, and I wasn't necessarily a naysayer, but I was like, hmm, this is not going to be all it's cracked up to be. But dude, it was cool. It was cool. I was buzzing about it for like 2 hours after. I had to record Wicked Spursy after, so I was like still buzzing about it, So um it was a really cool experience, man. And I didn't expect any more than say what we had with the partial a few years back in 2017. I didn't expect much more than that, but man, was it cool. And I don't know if you experienced this at all, but I know a lot of people had um, when the sun came out of totality and it started getting lighter and warmer again. Mosquitoes started hatching and just attacking people, and I thought it was just us. And I've gotten the question from like 10 other people since then, but like mosquito attacks, and it's just kind of weird. And I thought the apocalypse was happening, but apparently it was not. We're back to normal. My life hasn't changed much, but it's all good. And I too would not spend that much money to go anywhere to watch that again. But if I could do it from the comfort of my home, I'm all for it, man.
Can't beat that. Can't beat that for
You
sure.
you can't. So we are expecting our guy Tyler the Creator in a little bit here. But let's kick this off, man. Let's talk about our match because we've had a week to absorb what happened out there, and we have some things we can complain about. We have some things that we can be happy about. We have some things that quite frankly, we shouldn't be very happy with. There was some play that wasn't the best from our team. But I'm willing to excuse it because of the elements, because of the lack of ability to have the preparation, that kind of stuff. So, why don't you tell us what you saw? And I mean, in terms of how you felt about the opposition, because we know that like our starting lineup was pretty much picked itself from the last match.
Yeah, and in terms of the opposition, in terms of the players that Carolina had at their disposal, I really feel like this was a team that is, really built on physicality. They're built on speed, they're built on running, they're built on, just being out there and just running a track meet at us. Because, the green up until uh uh like the late 60th minute
Hmm.
for in the second half, the Green were toe to toe with Carolina. And after Lockerman hit the post and Bazzini didn't get on that rebound, you could really kind of see their legs starting to go.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that, like, honestly, I think that the biggest takeaway that I had from this game was that Vermont had chances. They had great chances to score, but were unable to put the ball on goal. Pierce O'Brien had a wide open net. I know, and he wasn't able to at least put the ball on goal. Carolina, credit to them. They had a bunch of shots that hit the target.
Hmm.
Great credit to Nathan Schnurr for being a brick wall for the vast majority of that game.
Hmm.
Um, excuse me, but when it really came down to it, um, just the final, you know, 25, 30 minutes of that game, Vermont's legs were just gone. Seeing, Sydney taking the ball into the corner and then trying to get, you know, crosses into the box. His crosses were just these long, looping, lobbing crosses that Carolina was just able to get under and then
Which
get out.
which really that really surprised me because earlier in the game, up until like that 60th minute, he had been putting in nice, strong, low crosses.
Yeah.
That our guys, namely Jake was able, not Jacob, I should say, not Jake, was able, to get a foot on. I mean, we had opportunities. Bazzini just wasn't in the right place for that rebound. Um, I think that we had plenty of opportunities, but like you said, they were like starting to run us off the ball. They had a more effective substitutions than we did. Uh, and they had bigger, stronger players. And for sure, um, like every single one of their players was at least probably a 7 to 8. They worked really hard, but the thing is, they didn't really dominate Vermont. Um, the way that an MLS Next Pro team should be dominating. You know, um, all of our guys were pretty much 6 to 7 out of 10 for me. Um, with the exception of Bazzini. I think Bazzini was mostly the, probably the most hardworking player out there. I think he was running back for a striker to run back and track back and play defense the way he was, um, to be finding himself like to be dropping back and receiving the ball to foot. Um, his hold up play was great, but like you said, 60th minute is when we started to kind of the train started to slow down and really come into the station at that point. Um,
Yeah, and I think that the kind of less said about the officiating for this game, the better. I do not think that the ref had a good game. Not catching a, flagrant knee to the back of Labovitz there in the penalty area on the corner. And like, obviously, it's not great when Labovitz turns around and almost headbutts that Carolina player, which he deserved, but it's still, these are, fiery, emotional players who are out there trying to go and pull off another cup set. Um, but I really think that, like I said, just kind of the grinding, um, really physical game, may have gotten to some of our players in the end. Because, during the regular season, this is Carolina kind of played like a a level above what Western Mass and Space Ghost play. This is the kind of style This is the kind of game that we have um, to cope with and learn how to beat and deal with because we're going to be facing that same style of soccer 4 different times during the regular season.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of creating, we have our creator with us now, looking like a 1988 hip hopper, um, in his Adidas tracksuit. How you
Is
doing,
that a
buddy?
Grimace purple Adidas track jacket?
It's actually blue, but in this lighting, it does look
Oh,
like
it's got a
straight up.
nice, it's got the red stripe on it, doesn't it? Oh,
It's
that's
got a
dope.
grimace look right now. Yeah.
How you doing, Tyler?
I'm doing well, gentlemen. Apologies for being late. Got
That's
all
okay.
the kids and cats sorted, and here we are. What's the good word on our post-match recap here?
So we're talking about opportunities that were missed. We've been talking about our competitive edge versus a team like this compared to a Western Mass, and a Sea Glass United type of a team. Um, do you have any insights for the game outside of we're going to give the referee a pass for this one, even though there were some blatant missed calls, and he was just had a rough day, but
Part of the game.
yeah, and you live with it, right? um
Yeah, I mean it's part of the league, and it over the course of a season it probably affects everybody equally. It all comes out in the wash, but it doesn't make it less frustrating when there are moments that could have gone either way or should have gone the other way. Yeah, I mean, my two big takeaways from the game after having had some time to think about it uh, was like one, that game really could have been ours. It was ours to win, and there were a couple of moments that could have totally changed the outcome, and that should be encouraging for the team for a variety of reasons, least of which being that we had minimum time to prepare. We were facing a team that was in, you know, in their fourth or fifth game of the season and probably had some preseason and were, much more in shape and match ready. And most importantly, we were facing a team that was, on paper, several tiers above where we're supposed to be. And that game was the margin was like razor thin. And to go out there and put in such a great showing and really push yet another higher tier team to the limit was is amazing. And I think it speaks to the quality of the coaching and the players and being able to pull together quickly. And it also is a great sign. I'm sure, as you guys have mentioned or discussed, it's a great sign for the upcoming season. If we are competitive with the MLS next team, we should be you know we should be contenders for winning the league outright this year.
yeah, I think that, and it was discussed, I think, in the stands and after the game, especially. Like, I think we were like, as a fan base and as a supporters group, especially, I think we were disappointed mostly. But like, the big takeaway was that holy shit, we actually have a team here.
Yeah.
Like, the first couple of seasons, it was like, what have we got? The second season was like, okay, this is the beginning of something that's going to be special. And it didn't bear out in the end. But if this is any indicator, we have a team here, and we don't even have our full host of players.
Yeah.
Like, we still have some players being introduced, which Dan and I will discuss, hopefully this coming weekend. But we have players have yet to be introduced, players who didn't make it. We did get to see Reed Fisher out there in some warm-ups and some training, the night before. He looks like a player to watch, young player, really good head on his shoulders. But we still have guys like Zach Zenge that are out there, and players that players that are proven commodities that are going to be coming back to us. So like I think that yes, we were disappointed at the game, but there were some big takeaways, and that's for our league, because these two games that we got to experience were, for me, a little bit of a novelty.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
you know, we weren't even supposed to be there. It's our second year, man. And I think that speaks to a little bit of the U.S. Soccer Federation knowing what they have. So
Yeah, and I mean, I do really think that, you know, on one point, the Green are there on merit. They got there with an at-large bid because of the points. I believe it was because of the points per game that they were able to accumulate. That's one of the reasons why we got a bid. And I think that it's great that we got two home games because of I think that that is, like you said, it's showing that US soccer is paying attention. They're seeing these crowds that we have. They're seeing the passion from the fan base. And, I think that everyone who came to these games put on a, great advertisement for what this upcoming season is going to look like.
It really is. I was saying to somebody like whatever the last two home games have been have shown that Vermont Green has the opposite of whatever fair weather fans are, like bad weather fans, like hypothermic fans, like the first game with the first Open Cup game was it was cold, but people just bundled up. The second game was like the worst of all worlds, right? It was like 36 and raining at the start, and just absolutely miserable. And I remember looking out behind us before the game started, maybe 20 minutes before kickoff, and I was like, not that many people, but totally get it. It's an awful night. And then next time I turned around, once the game actually started, the stands were full. And to have that sort of turnout on a Wednesday night in, sleeting, snowing, raining, you know, all sorts of biblical conditions is like amazing. And like it's been interesting talking to folks who, for them, that was their first Vermont Green experience, or who like, maybe went to one game in the summer and then caught one of these US Open Cup games. And I feel like the team, and the club is just going to hit the ground absolutely running in the summer because of this added momentum and interest from these two games.
so so as far as I know, we've discussed the game and where we think the club is going. And I know we often do that, but as far as the size of the league, and the amateur, I just like to pivot a little bit because we're getting into a portion of this of the preseason where we don't have a lot of action here. So we do have some stuff we can talk about, which is the viability of this league, the amateur league, in USL, and the lower USL tiers moving forward. Do you guys have any feelings as to what to expect from USL as MLS tries to push USL out of the picture? Um, and where do you see the amateur soccer in this country going as it pertains to what we have here in Vermont? Either one of you can just kind of jump
Well,
in.
I think, sorry, go ahead, Tyson.
Well, I was going to say, I did think that it is very interesting that it seems like there is going to be a very concerted effort on MLS's part to try and have a lot of their MLS Next Pro teams rebranded, not
Yeah.
as like New York Red Bulls 2 Academy. They're being something completely new. Like you're seeing it with the San Jose Earthquakes Academy team is now called The Town, and they're trying to kind of take on the Oakland Roots. Um, and I think that it's going to be less of an issue in USL 2 where we are right now. I think that USL League One is honestly where I think that that's where we're going to see a lot more growth. I think that that's where the USL is really trying to pitch its kind of expansion to. There's a lot of teams that are in the Southeast right now. There are a couple more teams that are coming in the Northeast, obviously Portland, Maine. There's also a team that is, I think, in Brooklyn that's going to play in like Coney
Yeah.
Island. That's
Mm.
like that's going to be a thing. Um, the USL Championship is at this point like they're a pretty established league. That the Louisville and Indy 11 game that aired free to air on CBS, they had almost 400,000 people watching that
I was gonna
game.
say, yeah. I
I
mean,
I
that to me was like, as like, I mean, obviously that's a couple steps up from where we are, but like as part of like the USL system, that's was an amazing thing to see that like it had really good ratings for what it was, a first venture into network viewership. And I think there's a real potential for people to who aren't aware of the USL system to suddenly be plugged into all these local teams. Where it's like, oh, who's this? Like, oh yeah, like that's a team I can actually get behind and who's in my neighborhood. Um, and it's really interesting, Tyson, to go back to your point about the MLS sort of pivot on branding and that like I feel like they are getting a sense of those sort of like unique club personalities uh having real value and that like someone's far more likely to latch onto and follow a team that has like a distinct identity away from their like parent club than they are to follow like it's like JV JV Chicago is not the same as like some really cool and so I feel like they do that to me speaks to the fact that they see a thread in the USL system because of how these clubs are allowed to exist and flourish with their own personalities. And can they recreate that? Who knows? I mean, I think San Jose is an interesting case study because they're basically like, yo, let's just grab this existing club and be like, it's our thing now. And that to me seems a little astroturfy, but who am I to judge?
Um, I get the feeling that a lot of these expansion clubs are um and I don't want to dig out anybody in particular, and I don't want to make any false equivalencies, with what we have and what our founders have done here. But I think a lot of these expansion clubs, um, and I'm not naming names again, but have owners who are there because they can see that there's a buck to be made in soccer, and you know don't really have a vested interest in actually putting out a great product or making sure that they're connected to their communities or the towns or cities that they're in. They're just there to make a buck, and I think that can, and I'm not saying that it will or that's even the case, but you're seeing that in a lot of leagues, and because we just have this kind of like new interest. Americans have a new interest in soccer, um, based on the popularity of the Premier League right now, and the past popularity of like leagues like La Liga. Um, but I worry that these billionaire owners that are coming in just thinking they can make a buck on soccer, I worry that that kind of waters down some of the lower leagues or even USL Championship. Because the USL Championship I think has the potential to compete with MLS, but they have to really tread lightly and walk a really thin line right now, so that they don't expand too quickly, and ruin their product. And I think they have a really good product, and I think they've done expansion the right way. Teams like teams like the Rhode Island, comes to mind immediately. I think they've done things the right way. They've connected to their community. They've taken players you know that are popular in the New England area and in Rhode Island even, and have come from those Rhode Island schools and Rhode Island towns. I think they've done it right, but there are owners out there that are just out there to make a buck, and that worries me a little bit. Does that have any? Do you guys have any thoughts on that at all? Because I mean, that could destroy a league.
I mean, but I feel like you're gonna get that regardless. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you've got Todd Bowley's out there trying to make a buck with Chelsea.
And look
Much
where they are. I mean,
He's not very good at it, but he's out there.
Yeah, right. He's out there.
stick
He's
with baseball, sir.
right. He's trying to do the old spend money to make money kind of thing, but he's just spending money at this point. So I mean I think that the owners and again this is just kind of a gross generalization. The owners who are in the USL Championship generally are the owners who are rich, but not rich enough to own an MLS team and the kind of ridiculous expansion fees that it costs to be able to get a new MLS franchise. Now, that's not to say that, obviously these are still very wealthy people. They're going and putting a lot into these clubs, but, you're going to find shady owners regardless of where you go. But I do think that
Yeah, show me the benevolent billionaire, right? I mean,
right, exactly. But I mean, in general, kind of the kind of salary structure and the kind of the way that the league is set up in the championship, it's a much lower stakes than say, the Premier League. You're not going to see like a USL championship team pull a Portsmouth and go, or a Leeds and go and implode, risking, millions and millions of dollars on trying to make it into the Champions League, because obviously we don't have that here. We've got CONCACAF. Um, just the financial stakes are just so much lower at this point that I don't think personally that we're running into that issue yet.
right. Well, there is no promotion and relegation to worry about either with these owners, so
Right.
they can take in big leaps or giant chances on things that maybe they normally wouldn't, I guess.
I think so,
Um,
but it's also interesting that like one of the sort of differentiators that USL has sort of floated was or discussed was creating a promotion relegation system for their system, which I think would give personally, I think would give them a really interesting uh edge, I guess, on MLS, where it's like, look, we're playing a three-tier, four-tier like proper system here. Like this is how soccer should be. Like that, I think would be, a really interesting way to differentiate themselves from MLS. But again, that would be like a create like more of a risk for investors, like going both ways. I think like if you're Vermont Green and you're like, hey, we can handle a summer season semi-pro situation and you do really well and suddenly have to like budget for a longer season,
Paying
like
players and
that would be
yeah,
tricky and obviously like you don't want to be so in that situation. Yeah, I mean, I think Tyson, you mentioned this, but like, yeah, you're gonna get shady owners in any situation where a certain amount of wealth is required for an organization to exist and function or start, and that's just the nature of the cost of doing business, the cost of running a team, and even bigger perspective, just how capitalism works. And USL is not going to dispatch down the walls of capitalism anytime soon. It'd be nice, but it seems unlikely. But I think one of the interesting things to me is looking at clubs and seeing which clubs have like really succeeded, not just on the field but off the field. And in the championship, it's the clubs that have, I think, real community buy-in and a real sense of how to reflect the community around them. And if you look at like the Detroit Cities and the Oakland Roots, and Pittsburgh Riverhounds, like all these clubs that are like very much a part of their city and a part of their scene. So far, Rhode Island seems really plugged into that as well. Like
Yeah.
that's something that the wealth of ownership can't uh, can't recreate in a inauthentic way. So I'm really curious to see how new clubs either fail or succeed trying to match the success of existing clubs that have really either been around for a long time or just really are a reflection of their supporters and their community. And I mean, Tampa Bay Rowdy is another great one. So
Yeah.
yeah,
They just smashed Rhode Island FC.
yeah,
But
Yes,
and
they
and Pitts
did. Yeah.
and Rhode Island gets to play Pittsburgh at home this weekend. So
nice.
um I think I think the USL is kind of they're getting into the like you said the CBS game. They have they're testing the waters a little bit with TV. The deal that they made with ESPN is kind of great for them, and it does give them a little bit more viability. It gives them a little bit more visibility, and overall, I think it's their product, the product that they put on the field. I think it's gonna show out, and I think it's going to impress a lot of people. Not to say that you shouldn't go support an MLS team. I think you should go support an MLS team. Go support any team that you feel a connection to. And just keep in mind that um like we always do, like I'm a Boston Red Sox fan. I know my owners definitely don't have my best interests in mind.
Not
We always
recently.
have to we always have to understand a lot of these billionaire owners only have their own interests in mind. But that doesn't mean we can't support the players that are on the field and support the team. Buy gear if you want, do whatever you want, but um, you have your reasons for not supporting if you don't want to. Um, so that all said, let's pivot back to Vermont Green because we have our first game coming up in a little bit against Boston. Um, Another away game to start the season. Our home game is on Labor. Our first home game is on not Labor Day, Memorial Day weekend. But what do you guys expect out of a team like Boston? Like every it seems like we start our season with them every single year, right? You never know what you're gonna get because you don't know like what players are returning, that kind of stuff. What do you expect for the season? Let's just talk about that for a second because this we have touched on it a little bit, but what do you guys expect, like rationally thinking, like is going to happen in this season for us?
I mean, like truly, I think that this is not magical or wistful thinking. I think that we could seriously win our division this year. I think that that is a completely reasonable thing. You know, another summer of uh some great players coming back. Pierce O'Brien has been a dribbling fool going down the wings. I'd love him to go and hit the target a little bit more often, but he's um, looked amazing. Musa is back for another season. Like this is truly I do truly think this is a stacked team. I think that it is not a unreasonable expectation that this could be the year where, we are finally able to get a couple of good victories over Western Mass and over Sea Glass. That would be great. Um, but I think that, even if it's um, another season where, if we don't win, if we're up there in like second or third place, I still don't think that that would be a bad result at all. But I also think, like I said, I think that this could be a very good year for us.
I mean, I too have high hopes based on, and I feel more confident saying it this year than in past years, but based on having seen two games played already, getting to see some of the new players, um, and just knowing who's coming back. Like this is as strong a Vermont Green side as I've seen, even without some new players and some really great regulars from last year being in the mix. And I think as always, we're going to have Western Mass and Space Coast as being the four games, or I'm not sure how many times we play them, the matches that actually are the most significant in terms of like final outcome for the league or for the division. And then there's just a wild card element of like, is are the Boston Bolts good this year? Is BlackRock a strong team? Who is on Pathfinder? Like it's really hard to gauge sort of other than Western Mass and Snowcoats who've been like consistently really good, like what the other teams are going to sort of where they're going to stack up. So, but just based on what we know about our own team and our own side, the coaches that are coming in, what we've seen in two games so far, yeah, I feel optimistic and hopeful that we win the division outright or finish a very, very close second this year.
Yeah, for me, I think the expectation. I think honestly the secret is out. You know, Vermont's going to bring in is going to bring in players. Vermont's not going to compromise on the way that they like to play. Um, and I think that teams like, you know, again and again, we keep mentioning them because they are the rivals. You know, the Sea Hags and Western Mass are going to play that game where they're just going to sit back and play anti-football and try and defend the best they can against the attack. Once they realize that they're not going to make it through the midfield. Um, and the strong midfield, I think, is the basis for this team. And I truly also believe that I don't think that, like you said, Tyson, I don't a third place finish, a second place finish is not a bad result. Um, I think that with what we've seen so far and the players that we're going to be bringing in, um, this team has already given us like a preview of what we're going to see. So I really already feel kind of connected to them, you know, and connected to guys like Pierce, connected to guys like Sydney, who, you know, for better or worse, might mostly for better, I think is probably not long for the USL one, you know, or USL, the USL two, like, you know, we got out of Gavork last year. And so I think we have a lot of talented players, and I think that I'm going to predict a first place finish, and I'm going to predict one loss this year. And hopefully my prediction comes true. I did say that we are going to beat Carolina Core pretty badly, I think. But and that didn't come to fruition, but it was weather based and red shirt based. So outside of that, I think we have a real chance to even make noise in the playoffs.
Agreed.
I Yeah, and I will say that it is going to be interesting this year because I believe in looking at the schedule that Western Mass Coast only play each other one time. They
That's
are
great.
the Yeah, they are each other's AC Connecticut for us because we've only played them a total of two times over two whole seasons. We get two games against AC Connecticut this year, but it just I think it actually this year puts an even bigger emphasis on us getting good results over New Hampshire and down in Ludlow, Mass, because they are also going to be beating up the Bostons and Blackrocks of our division instead of going and fighting against each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. All right, boys. So looking like it's coming to the end of the podcast, the end of our time together for this week. Um, So a little housekeeping we're going to do here. We are United in Green podcast. I always forget to do this, guys, so I'm going to do it right now. We are the United in Green podcast. Uh, we are on the Wicked Podcast Network, and we can be found on Instagram and still not Twitter. But we can be found on Instagram and we can be found on Facebook if you want to find us there, or you want to tell your parents about us, they can find us there. Um, but we will be on Instagram, and we are on all your favorite podcast platforms except for Apple still, but we're going to get that worked out. And we're going to get that worked out through our partners, the Blazing Musket. Blazing Musket is a wonderful website. They blog and they cover a variety of New England sports, mostly soccer. You'll find them talking about our Vermont Green, the MLS team in New England called the Revolution, uh, Hartford, and the Rhode Island FC. So please give them a follow if you can. Give us a follow. And until then, we're gonna sign off by saying up the green.
Up the green.